My name is Elena, and for years I sacrificed my own peace to fund my family's delusions of grandeur. I sat motionless staring at the glowing screen displaying my sister's latest arrogant social media update. She was posing triumphantly next to a brand new Tesla at a luxury dealership, her caption boasting about her incredible success as a self-made businesswoman, buying the ultimate gratitude gift for our parents. Beneath that sickening display of fake wealth, my parents left fawning comments praising her generosity, while deliberately mocking my careful financial habits as pathetic jealousy. My husband stood beside me reading those exact cruel words over my shoulder, before giving a firm nod to confirm our patience had reached its absolute limit. He looked at me with cold clarity before speaking his final verdict. "It is time you cut everything off. Bay." Without a single moment of hesitation, I logged into the corporate banking portal to dismantle her illusion. I instantly locked her access to the company credit cards while simultaneously blocking their phone numbers from our devices. I then submitted an urgent capital recall order directly to my legal team to freeze the remaining funds. Right at that moment, they were likely standing in the glossy showroom waiting to swipe the deposit for that ridiculously expensive car. I felt a deep sense of calm knowing the terminal would decline the transaction with a $0 balance notification to shatter their stolen facade completely. If you want to know how a single click destroyed their fake empire and exposed the ultimate, truly started from the ashes of 4 years ago, when a desperate phone call disrupted our otherwise peaceful existence. My sister Naomi stood on the absolute verge of bankruptcy with her media consulting firm in Boston, facing a mountain of insurmountable corporate debt. She arrived at our doorstep in tears, pleading for a financial lifeline because her aggressive expansion strategies had completely drained her operational budget. Her creditors were preparing to seize her remaining assets while her employees were leaving in droves due to unpaid salaries over several consecutive months. Seeing my own flesh and blood in such a pathetic state pushed me to make a highly risky decision against all rational financial advice. I decided to withdraw $3 million from my carefully managed personal investment portfolios to inject emergency capital into her dying business. Liquidating those assets meant I was putting my own future security on the line to rescue someone who had always been notoriously reckless with money. My husband Miles strongly opposed giving away such a massive sum without establishing an impenetrable legal safety net to protect our family. He possessed a brilliant analytical mind regarding corporate finance, so he insisted on drafting a rigorous investment contract containing strict control clauses before transferring anything. He demanded absolute transparency regarding every single outgoing transaction, exceeding a specific threshold to prevent her from slipping back into her old, destructive spending habits. The agreement explicitly granted us the ultimate authority to audit her expenses, while reserving the right to recall the entire capital immediately upon any breach of trust. Naomi eagerly signed every single page of that restrictive document without a moment of hesitation, just to get her hands on the survival funds she desperately needed to avoid public humiliation. That massive cash injection worked like absolute magic to instantly stabilize the chaotic situation at her Boston headquarters within a matter of mere weeks. The firm cleared all outstanding vendor obligations while securing enough operating runway to pitch for lucrative new media campaigns, without the crippling shadow of insolvency hanging over them. She quickly secured a few major corporate clients who brought in massive revenue streams to turn the company wildly profitable in less than a single year. This sudden influx of profit completely restored her position as a powerful executive who could confidently command a boardroom instead of hiding from angry debt collectors. She completely overhauled her personal wardrobe and upgraded her daily transportation to match this newly inflated persona of untouchable success. However, as the business began to flourish far beyond our initial expectations, a deeply disturbing shift occurred in her attitude toward the people who had saved her from total ruin. She deliberately started ignoring my crucial role as the primary investor whenever she discussed the foundational structure of her current corporate success with outsiders. She began aggressively booking interviews with local business magazines to paint herself as a brilliant, self-made entrepreneur who built a media empire entirely from scratch through sheer willpower. Reading those published articles made my blood boil because she systematically erased the existence of my $3 million to feed her insatiable ego. Her social media profiles became a constant stream of motivational quotes, advising young professionals to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, just like she supposedly did, without any outside help. When confronted about these blatant omissions during a private dinner, she casually brushed off my concerns by claiming that mentioning external investors would weaken her authoritative brand image. She argued that prestigious clients wanted to see a strong visionary leader rather than someone who had to rely on her sibling for a massive financial bailout. Miles simply watched her spin these ridiculous justifications with a cold expression before reminding her that brand image meant absolutely nothing if the underlying financial foundation was suddenly pulled away. She laughed off his warning as a harmless joke, but that exact moment planted the seeds of the arrogant entitlement that would eventually lead to her ultimate downfall. She genuinely started believing her own fabricated narrative to the point where she viewed our restrictive contract as an annoying technicality rather than a binding legal obligation. We chose to remain silent to maintain a fragile family harmony, but we never took our eyes off the quarterly reports to ensure our capital remained perfectly secure inside her corporate accounts. Thanksgiving last year was the exact moment when the final boundary of mutual respect shattered completely. The annual holiday dinner took place at the suburban residence belonging to my parents' mom and dad. Everyone had already gathered around the dining table waiting for hours before Naomi finally decided to make her grand entrance. She deliberately arrived extremely late, driving a rented sports car to ensure the neighborhood noticed her arrival. She walked through the door carrying multiple oversized shopping bags filled with expensive designer gifts to aggressively showcase her fabricated wealth. She immediately dominated the conversation by speaking loudly about securing massive corporate media contracts while ignoring anyone else trying to share their life updates. She skillfully wove subtle insults into her extravagant stories to deliberately demean the stable corporate jobs, providing secure incomes for Miles alongside myself. She mocked our careful financial planning by comparing our modest lifestyle choices to her current habit of flying first class for casual weekend getaways. She looked directly across the table with a condescending smirk before delivering a thoroughly rehearsed verbal strike designed to belittle my conservative investment strategies in front of our relatives. If you keep holding on to that narrow mindset, how will you ever rise up to be successful like me? Hearing that arrogant statement pushed me to finally break my polite silence regarding the hidden reality of her corporate empire. I kept my voice perfectly calm while gently reminding her that her entire media consulting agency was currently operating solely on the $3 million capital injection I had provided. I stated clearly that those emergency funds had not been repaid yet, so her luxurious spending habits were technically being funded by my personal savings. I intended to bring her soaring ego back down to reality by pointing out the unfulfilled legal obligations binding her company to our investment contract. I assumed a simple factual reminder would quickly stop her from throwing further insults at the people holding the financial lifeline, keeping her business afloat. However, that factual statement instantly ignited a massive explosion of irrational anger from the two people sitting at the head of the table. Mom and Dad immediately intervened with raised voices to fiercely defend the fragile pride of their eldest daughter. They completely ignored the truth about the investment contract while aggressively labeling me as a petty sibling wanting to ruin a joyful family gathering. Dad slammed his fist against the wooden table while loudly accusing me of being incredibly ungrateful for bringing up corporate debts during a holiday meal. Mom joined the verbal assault by stating I was clearly harboring deep jealousy toward the greatness Naomi had achieved through her non-existent hard work. They took turns tearing down my character while praising Naomi as the true financial savior of our entire family lineage. They told me I should be eternally grateful that my sister was elevating our family name instead of dragging her down with technicalities about borrowed money. Sitting there absorbing those vicious attacks from my own parents made me realize they had completely chosen her flashy illusions over my quiet sacrifices. They were totally willing to sacrifice my dignity just to maintain the false narrative that their favorite daughter was a self-made millionaire. Miles refused to waste his breath arguing against such aggressive delusion because he knew presenting logical facts to irrational people was completely useless. He decisively pushed his chair back from the dining table before walking over to the hallway closet to retrieve our winter coats without uttering a single word of protest. He walked back into the dining room to place my coat over my shoulders, while ignoring the ongoing shouts coming from my parents. He looked directly into my eyes with absolute clarity before delivering a firm command that cut through the chaotic noise filling the room. "Let us go home right now. You do not need to endure this humiliation for another minute." He firmly grabbed my hand to guide me toward the front door, while Naomi sat there wearing a triumphant smile, thinking she had won the argument. Leaving that house felt like shedding a massive weight, because I finally understood that maintaining a relationship with people who openly despised my existence was a terrible investment. We stepped out into the freezing November air, leaving behind the toxic environment to focus entirely on enforcing the strict legal boundaries we had established. 2 months prior to that explosive luxury car purchase at the showroom, the hidden financial cracks finally began exposing themselves with undeniable clarity. Miles exercised his contractual right to conduct a routine review of the quarterly financial reports provided by the consulting firm. He possessed a sharp eye for corporate accounting discrepancies, so he immediately spotted highly irregular outgoing transactions buried deep within the ledgers. The financial statements displayed numerous large sums being systematically fragmented into much smaller amounts, disguised as routine marketing expenses. These suspicious microtransactions were cleverly scheduled to fly under the radar of standard automated banking alerts, meant to flag massive withdrawals. He spent several late nights cross-referencing those vendor payments against the actual media campaigns currently running under the company portfolio. The numbers simply failed to align with the legitimate business operations because the purported advertising costs far exceeded any realistic industry standard. We urgently needed a specialized professional to trace those hidden digital footprints without accidentally triggering any internal alarms within the corporate network. I reached out to my best friend Douglas, who worked exclusively as an independent forensic auditor, handling complex corporate fraud investigations. We invited him over to our home under the strict veil of absolute secrecy to present the chaotic spreadsheets Miles had compiled. Douglas carefully examined the fragmented vendor accounts while comparing the routing numbers against known offshore payment processors used for money laundering. He adjusted his glasses while scrolling through the endless rows of suspicious marketing expenditures, with a deeply troubled expression on his face. "They are fragmenting the cash flow to move it outside. This pattern is too familiar in embezzlement cases," he stated with absolute professional certainty. The subsequent document review proceeded in complete silence over the next few weeks, while we maintained our normal daily routines to avoid suspicion. Douglas utilized his advanced tracing software to bypass the superficial vendor names to reveal the ultimate destination of our missing $3 million. The forensic audit uncovered that Naomi had deliberately fabricated dozens of fake invoices billed by shell companies she secretly controlled. She utilized those phantom media agencies to continuously siphon the investment capital directly into her own private banking accounts. The stolen funds were then shamelessly liquidated to finance her extravagant designer wardrobes, alongside those luxurious weekend getaways she constantly bragged about. The raw financial data revealed an even more sickening layer of manipulation designed to secure unconditional loyalty from our gullible parents. She did not merely drain the corporate accounts to satisfy her personal vanity, but strategically diverted a massive chunk into a dedicated offshore trust. The digital paper trail proved she established this specific hidden fund solely to purchase an outrageously expensive gift for Mom and Dad. She intended to use our stolen money to buy their eternal affection while simultaneously solidifying her untouchable status as the ultimate successful daughter. Discovering this calculated bribery scheme completely eliminated any lingering hesitation I held regarding the absolute necessity of destroying her fake empire. Miles placed a comforting hand over my trembling shoulder while staring at the screen before delivering his cold strategy regarding our next legal maneuvers. Just collect enough evidence when we release it, no one will be able to deny anything, he advised with a deadly calm voice. We chose to suppress our burning outrage instead of foolishly confronting her with incomplete accusations that would only allow her time to hide the assets. We spent countless hours meticulously backing up every single altered ledger alongside the corresponding bank transfer receipts into an encrypted external drive. We methodically compiled a flawless timeline documenting exactly when each fraudulent transaction occurred to build an impenetrable wall of hard evidence. Every piece of stolen capital was carefully highlighted and categorized to ensure the upcoming legal strike would be completely irreversible. We transformed our dining room into a secure command center where we plotted the precise sequence of events required to freeze her operations. Our silence over those 2 months was not a sign of surrender, but rather the quiet preparation of a devastating financial guillotine. We finalized the comprehensive audit report while waiting patiently for the perfect opportunity to activate the punitive clauses written deep within the original investment contract. That particular weekend evening pushed everything to the absolute final limit regarding our quickly fading patience. The quiet atmosphere inside our home was abruptly shattered when Mom unexpectedly called my personal mobile phone using an incredibly demanding tone. She immediately ordered me to transfer a massive sum of money into a newly established private fund specifically designed to purchase a luxury vehicle for Dad. She spoke with absolute sheer entitlement, expecting me to simply obey her aggressive financial demands without asking any logical questions regarding this sudden, extravagant purchase. She completely disregarded the reality that she was demanding my hard-earned savings to fund a completely unnecessary status symbol for someone who constantly belittled me. She spent several agonizing minutes endlessly praising Naomi for supposedly covering the vast majority of the exorbitant dealership costs out of her own generous pocket. She then sharply pivoted to harshly criticizing my character by calling me a completely selfish daughter who deliberately calculated every penny while ignoring fundamental family loyalty. She practically yelled into the receiver, claiming my cautious financial lifestyle was a deep embarrassment compared to the magnificent success my older sister constantly demonstrated to the entire world. Before I could even formulate a calm response to those vicious insults, Naomi forcefully snatched the device directly from Mom to assert her fabricated dominance. She loudly challenged my position by aggressively declaring she currently controlled the entirety of the corporate cash flow flowing through the Boston consulting firm. She specifically labeled me as an irrelevant outsider who possessed absolutely zero authority to interfere with any major financial decisions she chose to execute regarding the business assets. She arrogantly boasted about her executive power while completely forgetting that my $3 million formed the sole foundation keeping her precious company alive. I am the director. How I choose to spend is my right. Do not use that superior tone with me here, she screamed through the speakerphone. I maintained absolute total silence while deliberately allowing her raging ego to completely override her basic common sense during that chaotic phone conversation. Miles immediately grabbed his own mobile device to activate the voice recording application to capture every single arrogant admission spilling from her careless mouth. He held the digital microphone incredibly close to the speaker, capturing her explicit verbal confessions regarding the deliberate misuse of corporate investment funds for personal family gifts. We simply let her continue ranting about her invincible authority until she eventually hung up the phone, feeling completely victorious over her silent sibling. The very second that chaotic phone call permanently disconnected, we immediately contacted my lawyer, Bennett, to initiate the ultimate phase of our defensive legal strategy. We securely transmitted the freshly recorded audio file alongside the comprehensive forensic audit dossier directly to his encrypted professional email address for immediate review. We specifically instructed him to finalize all necessary legal paperwork required to execute an emergency financial freeze across all corporate accounts tied to the consulting agency. He quickly reviewed the undeniable evidence we provided before confirming that Naomi had practically handed us the exact verbal confession needed to activate the severest penalty clauses. Proceed immediately, the files are sufficient to prove a breach of contract. Miles instructed him over a brief conference call after confirming the transmission. Bennett professionally assured us the complex legal mechanisms were fully primed while merely waiting for my final authorization signal scheduled for the following morning. We spent the remainder of that Sunday night verifying our secure digital access protocols to ensure the impending total financial lockdown would execute flawlessly without giving them any chance to react. We synchronized our timing to ensure the banking institution would process the massive asset withdrawal right when they felt the absolute most untouchable. We simply refused to let another single dollar of our hard-earned money finance their pathetic charade of endless unearned luxury. The following morning officially detonated the final explosive confrontation, originating from a single arrogant social media update uploaded to the public internet. I opened my Facebook application while sitting at the kitchen counter, only to immediately confront a massive photograph dominating my digital feed. Naomi was striking an incredibly haughty pose beside a brand new Tesla parked outside a premium vehicle dealership located within downtown Boston. She accompanied that obnoxious picture with a lengthy status update proudly boasting about her phenomenal imaginary success as a visionary corporate executive. She explicitly framed the expensive electric vehicle as the ultimate display of filial piety, purchased entirely through her own relentless professional dedication. Scrolling slightly further down revealed several deeply insulting comments deliberately left by Mom alongside Dad right beneath that very public declaration. They continuously praised her extraordinary generosity while seizing the opportunity to brutally mock my supposedly pathetic frugality for hundreds of acquaintances to clearly read. They explicitly compared my careful financial boundaries against the magnificent purchasing power currently being demonstrated by their clearly favored eldest daughter. I silently slid my smartphone across the marble island toward Miles so he could read those toxic familial insults for himself. He quickly scanned the malicious paragraphs filling the glowing screen before his facial expression hardened into an absolute mask of cold determination. He looked directly into my eyes without displaying a single ounce of hesitation regarding our pre-planned defensive legal strategy against their relentless abuse. "It is time you cut everything off," he instructed with a firm voice that finalized our long months of silent endurance. I immediately followed his decisive command by opening my encrypted laptop to terminate their financial access without any further agonizing delay. I systematically revoked every single corporate credit card authorization while manually triggering the emergency account freeze we finalized during the previous night. I then navigated through my cellular communication settings to permanently block all incoming calls or text messages originating from any family member. I wanted to guarantee they possessed absolutely no method to harass us once the catastrophic reality of their situation finally materialized into their lives. Meanwhile, inside that luxurious Boston showroom, Naomi confidently approached the polished billing desk to finalize the massive vehicle purchase alongside our parents. She maintained her superior posture while casually handing over the primary corporate credit card to the waiting sales representative, expecting immediate subservience. The employee respectfully swiped the plastic rectangle through the payment terminal while the three of them stood there wearing incredibly smug smiles. The electronic machine suddenly emitted a sharp error tone, indicating a critical failure regarding the attempted financial transaction processing sequence. Naomi impatiently demanded the cashier try swiping the card another time, while loudly blaming the financial institution for utilizing outdated technical equipment. The employee nervously attempted the transaction process again, only to receive the exact same definitive rejection notice flashing across the digital monitor. The confident smirks instantly vanished from their faces when the representative looked up, wearing an incredibly uncomfortable expression to deliver the humiliating news. "Sorry, miss, the system says this card does not have sufficient funds to complete the transaction," the employee announced loudly enough for nearby customers to hear. That single factual statement instantly transformed their triumphant celebration into an agonizing display of public humiliation right in the middle of a crowded luxury dealership. People browsing nearby vehicles turned their heads to observe the ongoing commotion, while Naomi frantically searched through her designer handbag for an alternative payment method she simply did not possess. Mom stared at the declined terminal in utter disbelief, while Dad tried to step away from the cashier desk to avoid the burning stares of strangers. Their entire fabricated reality collapsed instantly into absolute dust because the stolen corporate funds financing their arrogant lifestyle were now permanently locked away from their greedy hands. The inevitable consequences of their relentless greed had finally caught up to them within the most embarrassing public venue imaginable. Exactly at 2 o'clock that afternoon, the heavy wooden front door of our residence began vibrating from relentless aggressive pounding echoing throughout the hallway. Naomi practically shattered the entranceway while violently pushing her way directly into our quiet living room, followed closely by Mom alongside Dad. Their faces were flushed with absolute fury while demanding an immediate explanation regarding the sudden catastrophic financial freeze paralyzing the consulting agency. She marched aggressively toward the center of the room, demanding we instantly reverse the banking lockdown, ruining her perfect afternoon at the dealership. "What crazy game are you playing with the corporate accounts?" she screamed loudly enough to rattle the glass windows overlooking the street. Miles immediately stepped forward to form an impenetrable physical barrier directly between my aggressive sister, while I remained calmly seated on the sofa. He raised his hand while delivering a chillingly calm warning, completely dismantling their furious momentum within a matter of mere seconds. He explicitly demanded they immediately lower their screaming voices, or he would instantly contact the local police authorities to report a hostile home invasion. The absolute icy determination radiating from his protective posture forced Naomi to take a sudden defensive step backward toward our shocked parents. Mom attempted to hurl another venomous insult regarding my supposedly treacherous behavior, but quickly swallowed her toxic words under his piercing glare. I completely ignored their pathetic theatrical outrage while reaching down to retrieve the thick manila folder resting beneath the wooden coffee table. I tossed the comprehensive forensic audit dossier alongside a small digital flash drive containing last night's recorded phone call onto the polished glass surface. The heavy thud of those damning documents instantly silenced the chaotic shouting echoing throughout our normally peaceful residential sanctuary. I pointed directly at the undeniable financial evidence proving her systematic embezzlement, while maintaining absolute emotional detachment from their rapidly escalating panic. I calmly explained that the digital drive contained her exact vocal confession, boasting about misusing corporate funds to purchase unnecessary luxury vehicles. I informed them that Bennett was currently preparing a massive civil lawsuit utilizing those exact materials to recover the stolen investment capital. "Read it carefully. That is not your company. That is my capital. You have secretly stolen," I stated with devastating factual clarity. Naomi frantically snatched the thick folder from the glass table while desperately scanning the highlighted banking statements exposing her fraudulent marketing expenses. Her previously flushed complexion instantly drained into a sickly pale gray because the meticulous spreadsheet systematically detailed every single stolen dollar. The undeniable proof regarding her offshore accounts utilized for personal luxury shopping completely eliminated any possibility of a plausible defensive explanation. The realization that we possessed an audio recording of her arrogant confession completely paralyzed her ability to formulate a convincing lie. Every single arrogant justification she previously rehearsed suddenly died inside her throat, leaving her gasping for air like a completely defeated coward. Mom snatched the financial documents directly from her trembling hands while Dad leaned over her shoulder to inspect the highlighted fraudulent transactions. They stared blankly at the overwhelming mathematical evidence proving the magnificent electric vehicle they bragged about was actually financed through grand larceny. The horrifying realization that their favored eldest daughter possessed absolutely zero legitimate wealth struck them both with the force of a physical blow. Their previously haughty attitudes completely disintegrated into total shock, realizing they had publicly celebrated a systematic corporate theft targeting their youngest child. They silently processed the terrifying reality that their arrogant social media comments from earlier this morning were publicly praising a devastating felony. The glorious illusion of familial success they desperately clung to evaporated instantly, leaving behind nothing except the bitter taste of absolute humiliation. They looked up from the ruined financial ledgers wearing expressions of utter disgrace because the undeniable truth completely destroyed their delusional superiority forever. 6 months later, the complex corporate asset liquidation process finally concluded completely, while delivering absolute financial devastation upon their shattered lives. The consulting firm underwent mandatory total liquidation through federal bankruptcy courts to successfully return my original $3 million investment alongside substantial punitive damages. Naomi completely lost her prized corporate empire while simultaneously receiving a strict judicial ban permanently prohibiting her from holding any future executive management positions. The undeniable legal verdict effectively destroyed her fabricated professional reputation, ensuring she could never manipulate another business entity or innocent investor ever again. She was forced to vacate her luxurious downtown apartment while surrendering every single designer item purchased using the embezzled corporate marketing funds. Mom alongside Dad abruptly lost their primary source of illicit funding previously supplied by their deeply disgraced eldest daughter. They were suddenly forced to hastily sell off multiple personal assets, including their suburban home, just to survive the crushing weight of their massive accumulated credit card debts. The luxurious lifestyle they foolishly adopted required immediate frantic downsizing because the stolen capital financing their extreme vanity no longer existed within their reach. They experienced the bitter reality of sudden poverty while facing constant harassment from aggressive debt collectors demanding immediate repayment for their incredibly expensive tastes. The lavish social circle they desperately tried to impress instantly abandoned them the very moment their humiliating financial crimes became public knowledge throughout the neighborhood. Despite everything they orchestrated against my marriage, they actually possessed the sheer audacity to arrive uninvited at my front porch while desperately weeping for unconditional forgiveness. They shamelessly attempted to weaponize our biological family connection, hoping I would miraculously open my wallet to rescue them from their overwhelming financial ruin. They stood there trembling on my doorstep, begging me to graciously clean up the disastrous mess created entirely by their own relentless greed. Mom hysterically promised they would completely change their behavior while Dad awkwardly tried to blame the entire embezzlement scheme solely on Naomi to save himself. They continuously sobbed about familial loyalty, while completely ignoring how easily they betrayed my trust during their arrogant showroom celebration involving that expensive electric vehicle. I decisively slammed the heavy front door directly in their tearful faces without speaking a single word of comfort, while permanently severing all remaining emotional ties linking us together. I explicitly affirmed through a final legal letter sent by Bennett the following morning that I held absolutely zero obligation to continuously fund their pathetic lifelong delusions. Miles stood firmly beside me inside the hallway, ensuring the security system was fully activated to prevent any further trespassing on our private property. Closing that door finalized my absolute liberation from a toxic family dynamic built entirely upon financial exploitation rather than genuine, unconditional love. Before concluding today's dramatic story, please do not rush to click away without considering the profound educational value hidden within these intense events. 3 incredibly crucial life lessons regarding modern relationships. Establishing absolute financial boundaries remains completely essential even among close blood relatives to prevent catastrophic familial exploitation. Furthermore, indulging in extreme superficial vanity utilizing stolen resources will inevitably result in absolute public humiliation alongside permanent ruin. Finally, possessing a highly rational spouse provides the ultimate protective shield during massive emotional storms threatening your stability. If you found yourself standing in Elena's exact position facing those begging parents, would you also slam the door or choose a different path? If you possess a different approach regarding this family conflict, please leave your comments below so we can discuss your unique perspectives. I sincerely appreciate every single viewer staying until the very end to support this